Hi everyone, in Algebra 2B, today we're going to be going over your questions on lesson 105A. So to start, we're going to just start on number 1. So number 1 is the weight of chlorine in a quantity of the compound C3H3Cl5 was 1050 grams. What was the total weight of the compound? So I have C3H3Cl5. So C3H3Cl5, and then I would have the total. And then we're going to get the weights of each. So for C, we have 12, so that would be 12 times 3, which is 36. H, we would have 1 times 3, which is 3. And for Cl, we would have 35 times 5. 35 times 5, which is 175. Okay, so I need to extend my diagram a little bit. And then for the total of that column I have 175 plus 3 plus 36, which would give me 214. Now it says that the 1050 grams was the weight of the chlorine, so this would be 1050, and they want to know what the total is. So we're just going to cross multiply there. So I would have 175x is equal to 214 times 1050, and divide both sides by 175. So that would be 215 times 1050, and then divided by 175. That would give you x is equal to 1284 grams. Now moving on to number 2, it's a distance problem. So it says Weasel headed for Table Rock Lake in a 10 mile per hour trot, but soon short wind forced her to slow to a 6 mile per hour walk. If she covered 64 miles in 8 hours, how far did she walk and how far did she trot? So our diagram is going to start with how far she trotted, and then she's going to continue walking. And so it will have distance trotted plus distance walked equals a total of 64 miles. It gives us the rate at which she was trotting was equal to 10, and then the rate that she walked was 6, and the total time that she took on this trot and walk was 8 hours. Now you want to solve for either TT or TW in this equation. So if I solve for TT, I would get 8 minus TW. Now you should remember that distance is equal to rate times time. So dt would be equal to RT/TT, and dw would be equal to RW/TW equals 64. So RT is going to be 10. TT is going to be 8 minus TW. RW will be 6, and then we have TW equals 64. Now we're going to distribute this, and that would give me 80 minus 10 TW plus 6 TW equals 64. If I subtract the 80 from both sides, I'm going to get negative 2 TW is equal to 64 minus 80, which is negative 16. And therefore, TW is equal to 8. Wait. This should be negative 4 TW. So then this TW would be equal to 4. And if TW is equal to 4, then TT is also equal to 4. But that's not what they asked for. They asked for the distance. So the distance of the trotting would be equal to the rate of trotting times time of trotting. So our rate of trotting was 10, and our time of trotting was 4, which means that the distance of trotting would be 40. Now I need to know the distance that they walked, And if the total distance was 64 and she trotted for 40 miles, then 64 minus 40 would give us 24. So we know the distance that they trotted and the distance that they walked. Now moving on to number 3, it says in the flask 140 milliliters of a 20% alcohol solution, how much pure alcohol should be added to get a final solution that's 44% alcohol? So I'm starting with a 20% solution, and I know that I have 140 milliliters of that. I'm adding pure alcohol, which would be 100%, and I would add X of that. And I would end with a solution that's 44% alcohol, and I would have 140 plus X of that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply what we're given. So I have 20 times 140 plus 100x equals 44 times 140 plus x. Now if I multiply that, 20 times 140 would give me 2,800 plus 100x equals 44 times 140, which would be 6,160 plus 44x. I'm going to move the x's to the left, move the 2,800 to the right, so 100 minus 44 would be 56. And 6,160 minus 2,800 is equal to 3,360. And then you're going to divide both sides by 56. And that would give you X is equal to 60 milliliters. Now moving on to number 4, another word problem, and this one's going to be based off of lesson 96. So I'm going to pull out my notes from lesson 96, and it says that the number of potatoes vary jointly as the number of mules and the number of farmers squared. So first of all, I start with the potatoes, so that would be P1 over P2. And varies jointly is going to be this equation right here, and it's varying jointly based off of the number of mules first. So that would be M1 over M2, and it says and farmers squared. So that would be F1 squared over F2 squared. And now what we're going to do is we're going to input the variables that they give us. So they tell us that there are 5 mules and 5 farmers when there were 750 potatoes. So that would be 750 equals, and then it would be 5 mules and 5 farmers, but that's squared. That's going to be over 10 mules and 10 farmers, but we're going to solve for the number of potatoes. So we're solving for P2, and then we have 10 mules and then 10 farmers squared. So now what you're going to do is you're going to cross multiply. So on the left-hand side, you're going to have 5 times 25x is equal to, I'm going to try and squeeze that in. So that would be 750 times 10 times 100. Yikes. Okay, so 5 times 25 would give us, so on the next line, I'm going to go 125x equals, and that would be 750 times 10 times 100, which would be 750,000. And that would give me, when I divide by 125, I get x is equal to 6,000 1,000 potatoes. Okay, and that's your result for number 4. Now moving on to number 5. So number 5 is going to be based off of lesson 101. So we have to remember the selling price is equal to purchase price plus the markup. So number 5, the notes that we have are selling price equals purchase price plus the markup. And the markup can either be the percent of the selling price or the percent of the purchase price. And we're actually dealing with both on this one because it says the markup was $800 and the cost was $2,400. What was the markup as a percentage of the percentage of selling price, and what was the markup as a percentage of the cost? So the cost the markup was $800. So what they give us is that if we write, we have selling price equals purchase price is $2,400 plus the markup, which is $800, would give us a selling price of $3,200. What they want to know is if what was the markup as a percentage of selling price. So if I did the percent, and we always put percent over 100 of the selling price, which is $3,200, equals the markup, which the markup that they give us is 800. So I would have percent over 100 equals 800 divided by 3,200, and that would give me 0.25. Then I'm going to multiply both sides by 100, and that would be 25% of the selling price. And then I have to find the percent markup of the purchase price. So that would be percent over 100 of 2,400 equals 800. Well, these zeros would cancel, so really I could divide 800 by 24, and that would give me the percent is equal to 33.33%, and that would be of the purchase price. So that problem was a little bit confusing. I did get a little confused. So we had to solve for the selling price still, and then we just needed to find our percents of our markups. Okay, and now looking at a number 12. So for number 12, we're going to be looking at this equation right here is what we need to get. So I'm going to start with trying to get my equation in the format that looks like this by completing the square. So I'm going to start by putting all my x's in parentheses. Now I'm going to take half the term that's attached to x. So that would be x plus 3 squared. Square that is 9. Remember, you have to do the opposite to the outside. So that would be minus 9, and that would be minus 1. So now we're in the correct format right here. The plus sign means that on the outside means that it's going to be a happy face parabola. It's going to face up like this. The x plus 3 is going to be my axis of symmetry, so you set that equal to 0. So x is going to be equal to -3, and then -1 here is my vertex. So now what I'm going to do is on -3, on the x-axis, I'm going to put a dotted line. And then at -1, I'm going to put my vertex. Now I'm going to use this chart here, which tells me from the vertex I'm going to go over 1 up 1, and then over 2 up 4. And if you wanted to keep going, it would be over 3 up 9, over 4 up 16, but over 1 up 1 in either direction, and then over 2 up 1, 2, 3, 4, and that would be here. So you're going to draw this diagram. That looks like that. Okay, and that was from lesson 100. So if you wanted to flip back to your notes for that one, that was from lesson 100. Now we're gonna look at the absolute value. So for this one, the first thing that I'm gonna do is I look to see that this is based off of integers. So I know this is gonna be dots, not the arrow. I'm gonna start by moving the 2 to the other side. So I'm gonna subtract 2. So I have negative absolute value of x is greater than -1. Then I'm going to divide the negative sign, which means that I have to flip my inequality. So now I have my absolute value of x is less than 1. Now I flip to these notes, which says if the absolute value is less than a positive number, you're going to go to the 2 endpoints, which would be the positive of that number and the negative of that number, and you're going to connect them. So on my number line, if I had -2, then I put -1, then 0, 1, and 2. Here's my number line. It's not going to be filled in on 1 and -1 because there's no equal sign underneath, but the only integer in between the -1 and 1 is going to be 0. So you should only have 1 point filled in on 0. And that came from your notes from lesson 99. Now for number 14, we're going to flip to our notes for lesson 98, which says the number is equal to the first number plus fraction times second minus the first. And the order in which it shows up is always fraction first second. So my equation is going to be the number is equal to the first plus the fraction times a second minus the first, and the way it shows up is always fraction and then first and second. So first number is going to be 2 1/4. Fraction is 3/5. Second is 4 1/2 minus 2 1/4. Now I'm going to make those into improper fractions. So that would be 9/4 plus 3/5 times 9/2 minus 9/4. I want to make a common denominator in the parentheses, leaving everything else the same. So 9/4 plus 3/5. Now 18 minus 9 is just 9. And then that's going to be over 4. So really I have 9/4 plus 27/20. And my common denominator will be 20. So I'm going to multiply that by 5. So I have 45/20 plus 27/20. And that's going to give me 72/20, which can be simplified because 72 divided by 2 is 36. Well, and that divided by 2 is 18. So this would be equal to 18/5, or written as a fraction would be 3 3/5. Okay. And then the last problem that we're going to do is going to be number 15. So for number 15, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 28 to eliminate the denominator. And then the bottom one, I'm going to multiply by 100. So when I multiply the first one by 28, I would multiply the 2 by 4. So that would be 8x minus 7y equals 6 times 28, which would be -168. The bottom equation would turn into 7x plus 14y is equal to 658. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do elimination. I'm going to multiply the top equation by 2 so I can eliminate the y. So if I multiply that by 2, I get 16x minus 14y is equal to 168 times 2, which would be negative 336. And I'm adding that to the existing second equation, which would be 7x plus 14y equals 658. Now our y's are going to cancel, and I have 16 plus 7, which gives me 23x is equal to 658 minus 336, which is 322. And now hopefully that divides evenly, and it does. So x is going to be equal to 14. And then you're going to solve for y by plugging that in to one of the equations. So I'm going to just choose the bottom equation. So it would be 7 times 14 plus 14y equals 658. And 7 times 14 is 98. So I'm going to subtract 98 from both sides. And that would give me 14y is equal to 658 minus 98, which would be 560. And then hopefully, again, that divides evenly, and it does. So y is going to be equal to 40. And that should conclude all of your questions from this lesson. Hope you guys all have a great day. Bye.